Pep Guardiola insists he is relaxed over Bernardo Silva's contract situation as Manchester City prepare for a pivotal Premier League clash with Leeds. The City boss says he has not talked to his captain about whether he will stay beyond this season, but will support whatever decision the 31-year-old makes as he enters the final year of his deal. "I want the best for Bernardo," Guardiola said. "If he wants to stay, I will be more than delighted. He's been here 9 years, and he'll decide what's best." Silva, rested in the midweek shock Champions League defeat to Leverkusen, is expected to return on Saturday, unlike fellow captain Rodri. The midfielder remains sidelined with a hamstring injury suffered 6 weeks ago and will not feature against Leeds. City enter the weekend 7 points behind leaders Arsenal, and pressure is growing after a mixed run of league form and Guardiola's heavily rotated European lineup. But former City and Leeds midfielder Fabian Delph believes his old club have the quality and the manager to mount a serious title push. Delph, speaking while on club punditry duty in Korea, backed Guardiola to spark another long winning streak and even suggested the Catalan could extend his contract beyond 2027. "Pep is all or nothing," Delph said. "He's still got that hunger. With this young squad, he might think he has another 3 or 4 years in him. City can absolutely go on a 10 to 15 game run." The former England international, who famously thrived as Guardiola's surprise left-back in their 198-point back-to-back title era, also praised Arsenal's form under another ex-City man, Mikel Arteta, but insists the race is far from over. As for Saturday, Delph admits he'll be on the fence between his two former clubs, but thousands of miles from the Etihad, he'll be watching closely as City aim to reset their campaign. Manchester City now have 10 undroppables, but final selection decision is wide open. Pep Guardiola gave his fringe players a chance in midweek, but Manchester City's defeat to Bayer Leverkusen will have him thinking again. The overwhelming feeling for Manchester City late on Tuesday night was one of a missed opportunity. A chance to get the defeat to Newcastle out of the system had gone, as had putting one foot firmly into the last 16 of the Champions League. As for the players, most of whom had waited patiently for a chance to impress, they were eyeing up a Carabao Cup quarter-final after fluffing their lines. Pep Guardiola's decision to make 10 changes backfired, and the lack of fluency in a team thrown together was predictable. City lacked any real patterns of play and never really looked likely to get a result against the Bundesliga side. It was an alarming performance. Those coming into the side might feel a sense of grievance that they were chucked into a much-changed team rather than 3 or 4 changes to a settled team. But whatever the reason, this was an audition that went horribly wrong for all of them. None of them can really expect to keep their place for Saturday's Premier League game with Leeds United, having not done enough in the Champions League to warrant another start. If anything, Guardiola's rotation only strengthened the hand of the players dropped. He had picked the same team for 3 Premier League games running, and nobody would really be surprised if that was 4 in a row this weekend. It certainly feels as if at least 10 players can be penciled onto the team sheet already. Gianluigi Donnarumma was always a certain starter in goal, while a defence of Matheus Nunes, Ruben Dias, Josko Gvardiol and Nico O'Reilly picks itself at the moment. Nico Gonzalez will continue to deputise for Rodri in midfield, while Bernardo Silva and Phil Foden are also likely to start in midfield. Jeremy Doku is the in-form winger, and Erling Haaland will clearly lead the line. That leaves one place up for grabs, which, against Bournemouth, Liverpool and Newcastle, went to Rayan Cherki. The 21-year-old's hot streak has cooled recently, however, and his cameo off the bench against Leverkusen wasn't great. If Guardiola opts for a change, he could bring back Tijjani Reinders into midfield and continue to pack central areas, a tactic that worked well against Bournemouth and Liverpool. Alternatively, he could bring in a second winger in Savinho or Oscar Bob to play on the right. There is also the possibility of playing Omar Marmoush. The Egyptian has been struggling lately, but should still pose a goal threat. He can play just off Haaland or coming in off the left. If 10 places in the team to face Leeds are already settled, then the one that might be available will at least give Guardiola a dilemma. Savinho fails to answer critics as Manchester City debate rages on Savinho was one of many who failed to impress in the Champions League defeat to Bayer Leverkusen. But the Manchester City man has struggled for large parts of this season. Plenty of Manchester City players' stock went up by not starting in midweek. 10 changes contributed to a drab performance and a dire defeat to Bayer Leverkusen as the Blues suffered a Champions League setback. None of the starters staked their claim for more regular involvement, and it felt the latest in a line of such showings from Savinho. The 21-year-old was wanted by Tottenham in the summer, then picked up a mysterious injury that ruled him out of any games during the transfer window, and posted pictures of packed suitcases on his social media, none of which created a positive impression with the City fanbase. Ultimately, he stayed put at the Etihad and was then handed a bumper new City contract in a significant show of support by the club's hierarchy. But after a bright showing in Spain against Villarreal last month, there has been precious little from the Brazilian in recent weeks. He was poor off the bench at Newcastle United, spurning a late chance, and was peripheral in midweek. Speaking on this week's Talking City podcast, recorded ahead of the game against Leverkusen, the winger was a topic of debate. He is maddeningly inconsistent. He seemed to get a lot of criticism on Saturday, and it was a bad cameo. But there has got to be more there. He clearly fluttered his eyelashes at Tottenham in the summer, and was clearly interested in making that move. City always say they won't stand in a player's way if they want to go. I don't get the impression that City were that keen on selling him. They did shut it down reasonably early, and then he got a new contract after one average season, I would say. That performance at Villarreal, he was brilliant. And you thought he was stepping it up, and was going to be the player City need him to be, and he just can't put it together. Pep has gone to this system where he is only playing one winger, if that, at the moment, and it makes it harder for Savinho to get in the team. If you are going to play one player who is going to go wide, it is going to be Doku at the moment. Savinho didn't do a lot last season, and then was at least very open to the idea of going, and then got rewarded with a new contract. He is having too many games where he is stinking the place out. The decision to give him a new contract, that seemed mad. He had 4 years left on his old contract, he had done okay last season, and is only 21. I found that bizarre. He isn't a player where there is interest from someone else that means we better tie him down to a long-term contract. He hasn't become that player yet. That decision was odd to say the least, and he has then not kicked on. But we maybe had this conversation last season around Doku to a degree, and it does feel like he has kicked on as a young player and a winger. And it is difficult to be a winger in the Premier League compared to anywhere else. Savinho has the problem of wingers not being picked in this City team. So there does need to be a step back. But it's that emotional response of him wanting to go, and he then gets a new contract he probably doesn't deserve, and he can't change games. Guardiola must rate him because he was the most used at the CWC, and it did feel at the start of the season that City's most likely 11 had Savinho in it, and now maybe he'll be lucky to get 20 minutes off the bench every other week. Manchester City might have got their transfer strategy wrong in 2025. Manchester City have had a busy year in the transfer market, but at the end of it, the question is how much the team has improved. This year was supposed to be the start of a rebuild at Manchester City. Big names were shown the door, and both transfer windows in 2025 were dominated by new arrivals, with more than £350 million spent in January and the summer. In total, there are 9 players in Pep Guardiola's squad who have joined the club this year, with a further 2 out on loan, in Vita Rice and Sverre Nypan. The spending spree has added strength to a squad that fell apart during an unprecedented injury crisis last season. But after back-to-back defeats and 3 losses in 7 games in all competitions, the question is whether City have pursued the right transfer strategy this year. They have added depth, but have they added enough quality? If everyone was fit and available, of the 9 players signed this year, there might only be one who is absolutely guaranteed a start in Guardiola's strongest team. That is £26 million goalkeeper Gianluigi Donnarumma, who has offered an upgrade on Ederson. With Rodri still struggling for fitness, the £50 million spent on Nico Gonzalez is looking a wise investment. The Spaniard has improved this season, but it is evident he is still some way short of his compatriots' level. As Guardiola said recently, when Rodri is fit, he will play. Elsewhere in midfield, it seems likely that one of Ryan Cherki or Tijani Reinders would start. The only games where neither has started this season have been at Huddersfield in the Carabao Cup and Villarreal in the Champions League. Which one of them gets the nod is the subject of plenty of debate at the moment. Turkey was in fine form a couple of weeks ago, but struggled from the start against Liverpool and Newcastle, and was disappointing in a 25-minute cameo from the bench in the midweek defeat to Bayer Leverkusen. He is still only 22 and looks a bargain at £34 million on his day. But he is adapting to a new league, and his style of play means there will be times when he is on the periphery of games. Reinders looked a snip at £46 million in the early weeks of the season, but after winning Man of the Match against Wolves on his Premier League debut, he has gone backwards. He has failed to score since, despite scoring 15 times for AC Milan this season, and isn't leaving his mark on games from midfield. He has been on the bench for the last 3 Premier League games and spent the final quarter against Leverkusen playing at right back. If this was his chance to prove he should be back in the side, then he didn't take it. Omar Marmoush is the most expensive of the 2025 recruits at £59 million, and it's probably fair to say City wouldn't be in the Champions League without his goals in the second half of last season. But his standards have slipped this term, and his only goal in 11 appearances came against Swansea City. Abdulkadir Kusanov has looked a relatively reliable stand-in at right-back and centre-back. But on the left, it has been a dispiriting couple of months for Ryan Ait-Nouri. The £31 million summer signing